Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the G-Sail vehicles once again, and this time we're going to have a look at Germany. So let's get into it and see what is going on. Starting off with ground, we have a bunch of different things that are on offer, starting off with the Panzer II-C DAC. Now this is just a Panzer II-C, which has been given a bit of a makeover, as you can see here, but basically what this vehicle is, if you actually take off all of my scrub bashing stuff, which is very rude, especially from pages of history events, it is just a standard Panzer II-C with a different camo. They did update the actual model a little bit ago, which was quite cool, but it is just that. Now, if you don't know about the Panzer II-C, it is actually really powerful. It has HVAP, which gives it a lot of penetration for the BR, and also, as I said, this comes around a lot for page of history events, so since it's super cheap, it might be worth picking it up just for those, just to give you a bit of a bonus when it comes to its SL and also RP modifiers, which is quite nice. Next, you have the Fahrzeug, which is a interesting vehicle to say. This vehicle, in its entirety, is just a fat mess of a vehicle. Each of the tech trees pretty much has one of these, like the A1E1 Independent, the T35, the SMK. Some of them are better than others. I'd say the Fahrzeug is probably on the lower end of usability, and the basic reason why is because it just doesn't have a lot of armor. Its main armor is 20 millimeters, which is just no good. You know, the Panzer II, for example, has double the penetration of that, and even though it has 6 crew members, they're all pretty close together and quite easy to destroy. The vehicle does have a 37 millimeter though, and also it has access to this 75 in this funny coaxial setup, so technically you can double barrel people, which is quite fun, but also at the same time you're not talking about a ton of pen on the guns, and it's just a large vehicle which, you know, is quite expensive for what it is as well, which is one of the issues with these kind of like large tanks. They're just very expensive. The only reason to pick these up is if you're kind of, you know, together with a few people and you just decide that you're just going to do a few dumb things with it, and that's pretty much it. Then you got the Panzer IIIN. So the Panzer IIIN, if you want to pick it up, don't buy it. Basically, it's available, I believe, in the Warbond shop for the Battle Pass. So save your money and just get it there. You know, it's a fine vehicle. Short barrel 75 is okay with the heat, but generally has a few other issues. Already talked about it in the Battle Pass video for the Warbonds, so check it out there. Then you have the 15cm PZW42. This one's pretty useless. It's a vehicle which just has access to 20 of the 150mm rockets. That's pretty much it. So not a ton of pen, decent explosive mass, so you can overpressure stuff, but it's just a meme machine. Like it's nothing that's going to help you grind or anything. It's just a bit of fun, but I feel like there are a lot of other machines that you can have fun with that don't have the same limitations that the 15cm has. So this would be a no from me, just for all of those reasons. There is a vehicle such, or there are vehicles at rank 3 which are a lot better than it, which are a lot more fun, like this T34 747. This is just a standard T34-76, which has access to no side skirts. That's pretty much it. It's a captured T34 for the Germans, and it's part of a pretty stellar lineup at rank 3 and does really well. T34 is the perfect example of jack of all trades. It has a good gun with good penetration, has decent armor because of its volumetric status with the rounds, and there's a lot of weird angles which, you know, stuff kind of falls off, and it has really good mobility too. So if you enjoy it in the Soviet tech tree, there's no reason to not get it in the German tech tree if you want to grind through it. I would say there are a lot of good vehicles in the German tech tree to play instead of this, but this could be a good complement to them if you want some familiarity. You also have the Panzerbefehlswagen 4J, which is just a Panzer 4J. And that means it doesn't have the greatest turret rotation, but it has all of the other stuff of a Panzer 4. I would just play the standard Panzer 4s. You don't really get too much of a bonus from this one. The other Panzer 4s are in much nicer positions and generally play better because you don't have to worry about that targeting speed, which you have to do on the premium and also the standard Panzer 4J. You then have, of course, some other vehicles such as the KV-2 754. This is just a KV-2, has a cupola, so technically it has worse armor, than the other ones, but I mean, it's still not great armor, like 75mm plate here, meaning that you could go pen it. It's a bit of fun, you know, if you don't want to grind out the one in the standard Soviet tech tree. I suppose you could have this HE slinger with the big old donkey gun to have a bit of a good time in. I've actually used the KV2s in the past in the Page of History events, just to, once again, just donk around the place and have a bit of fun. And since the vast majority of Pages of History events are pretty much like Operation Barbarossa-esque, things like the German and the Soviet tech tree are used a lot, which is why a lot of these premiums have a lot more use than they may have in the past. Then you also have the Panzerkampfwagen Churchill 3. This used to be part of a crazy powerhouse lineup, which was the captured lineup, KV-1B, Panzer, Kampfwagen, Churchill, plus also the T-34. Not as good anymore, but still fine as a vehicle. It definitely is nowhere near as good as it used to be, and I feel like there are a hell of a lot better options, such as the KV-1B, but at the same time, I'm sure there are people who do enjoy this one. It just doesn't fit me because it's too slow. The armor, even though it's thick, is completely flat, so it's really easy to go through, and even though the 57mm punctures penetration-wise, it just doesn't have enough post-pen effect to make me interested. You also have the Brummbär, so the Brummbär itself is just a donkey machine, and sometimes donkey machines can be fun. The thing that's nice about the Brummbär is not necessarily it just has this 150mm Stu 43 L12 howitzer on it, it's also, it has quite a lot of armor on the front of it. It also it went down in BR, and a lot of things went up in BR, so this actual superstructure on the top got a lot more tanky, which is really fun for it. And as I said, it's just a HE lobber or a heat lobber, depending on how you're feeling. Overpressure really improved this thing, but it really is just I'm gonna have fun and just donk people and then go home kind of vehicle. It's not something that's gonna carry games. You also have the Brummbär. Oh no, sorry, we've already gone through the Brummbär. My brain is breaking. We have the KV-1C 756. So this vehicle, it did get up-BR'd a while ago, which kind of nuked it, because if you actually have a look at 5.0 for the Germans, there's not a ton of stuff. Like, you have a lot at 5.3, 5.7, but at 5.0 you have the VK3002, and then that's pretty much it. You don't have too much else. Most of it's at 5.3, and you don't want to up to the KV-1C. What has actually helped it a lot, though, is they did up-tier a lot of its Predators recently. Like, a lot of 5.7, 6.0, 6.3s got up-tiered, so it will actually face more of the matchmaking that it used to, and that means that its armor can do really well, and its 75mm can also do really well. This is basically just a mix of a KV and the Panzer IV's gun, which really is nice for the vehicle. It works fantastically well together and is something to really enjoy. The Panzer Befehlswagen 6P is a vehicle which also is very nice. The major thing that is nice about this one is the simple fact that it has this really thick frontal armor plate. So you have like this plate here of 100mm, and then it also has a back plate of 102, meaning that it has really good effective thickness on the front. It does have these angle weak spots, so if you are angled against something, they can go through, and also it does have the cupola, which can go through too. The main thing to understand is a lot of vehicles got up-BR'd once again around this area, so this one can be pretty useful compared to previously. It has two major issues. The first one is the targeting speed, once again, is just really low on the vehicle, and that means getting the gun on target can be a bit of a pain, and also these weak spots on the side, but it does have a really good transmission, so you can get in and out of places really quickly, especially for a Tiger, so that's really cool that it has access to that. The Befehlswagen Jagdpanther also is here once again. A lot of other vehicles went up. This one did go up and down and all over the place, but it also got an updated model, which helped it out when it came to its armor. The BFW Jagdpanther is a nice vehicle, and it has a really nice gun on it for the BR. It's got decent mobility for a tank destroyer, and at its BR and lower, the armor does actually work, which is really nice on it. You can see it has 132mm of effective thickness, most of it, which is really good. It does have the same issues as a lot of tank destroyers, though. Once your transmission gets knocked out or your mobility gets knocked out, you're kind of just a duck out of water, and also doesn't have a top machine gun, so it gets bombed a lot, which kind of sucks. But it is for a tank destroyer. very good for its BR. The bane of many people's existence over the years of War Thunder, the RU-251 is also on sale. This one has actually been up-tiered twice because it's incredibly effective, and it took the longest time to be able to up-tier this thing. No idea why, it just took years. It's really good, very mobile, great scout. The 90mm can be a little bit all over the place, but if you use it as a scout first and a killer second, you'll do really well with this vehicle. Also, over the years, they have stacked this area for Germany. It got so stacked, they had to move up everything that was at 7.3 to pretty much 8.0. But there is still a lineup there. The Weasel, the Patton 2, if you have that, and also, I suppose, the Kugelblitz and a few others from the right-hand side. But it isn't as good of a lineup, but since you can run this at 7.3, where you can also bring along, since it is a light vehicle, is the Arado 234C3, giving you 3 separate 500 kilo bomb drops, meaning that you can easily get 5 kills without even really thinking with that 2 vehicle combo, which is super, super powerful in general. Then you got the Patton 2 that we talked about before. This one got a buff recently with everything going up in BR and it not. And then also gun depression. 10 degrees now instead of 5, so super nice. It's a bog standard medium tank, you know, decent mobility, decent gun. There's nothing really huge to talk about this thing. I've seen this being used incredibly powerfully by a lot of people. For me, I don't personally like it that much, just because I find the gun a little bit bobbly, and also the rounds on the 90mm don't always do what they say on the tin, which kind of sucks, and the reload's a little bit long for it compared to others, but it is still a completely fine vehicle. And then the last one in the ground tech tree is, of course, the TAM2IP, which recently went up in BR because everything else did. It gets access to DM33, it gets the laser rangefinder, it gets the scouting, it gets the additional armor, it gets everything you would ever want. The only thing it doesn't have is thermals, which you don't need. If you actually train your eyes, instead of just looking for white, you can look for other things. It's a very, very powerful vehicle, and also part of an incredibly good lineup for the Germans too. Definitely worth it at the end of the day to be able to use. Really good, this one, and probably my pick out of all of the ground vehicles. For aviation for Germany, there are a few picks, but I'd actually probably say it's better to just pick up the packs for Germany, just because of the fact that there are some really nice vehicles in the high echelon, stuff like the Lazo M, for example. I feel like blows a lot of these guys out of the water. Even stuff like the Seahawk, but I don't even know if the Seahawk is around right now. Usually when it comes to that stuff, it appears and then disappears a lot of the time. Even like the Focke-Wulf 190 D13 is in a really nice place because of, you know, stuff like that. But it is a pack vehicle, which has to be at least thought about. We start off with the Flegels. So Flegels, the BF-109A. It's just a BF-109 with a twin prop instead of a, is it a tri-prop or a quad? I can't remember. But it's got less blades on it, basically. Meaning that it's a little bit slower, especially since the engine is the Umo 210D, which is a lot worse than many of the other BF-109s. Only has two 7.92mm machine guns too. Really isn't a great vehicle. It's just a starter premium. And some of them are good, like the Panzer II-C, and some of them are bad, like this one. What is a better vehicle is actually the Ju-87R2 Libya. This is just a copy of this one, though, so just to let you know, you can just grind this one out. The difference between them is just the camo. Everything else is the same. It's good in naval and also ground. It has access to a 1,000 kilo bomb at 1.3, so you can run it with those Panzer II-Cs and cause hell with a lot of the newer vehicles. Another CAS element that Germany has access to is the IL-2 1942. This is the IL-2 that has the 23mm and then also the 7.62s. I like the IL-2, especially the early variants, because they're quite low in BR, and also the 23mm penetrate quite a lot. So against many of those different ground targets that you run into in the you know, an air realistic or air arcade, you can actually penetrate them, such as medium tanks and heavy tanks, with these guns, which is really nice and can change the battle for your team. It also can dogfight, but if you want that, you should go for the later variants of it, and can also carry bombs, so it can be used in a casserole as well. This one's pretty decent for the ground side of things, and also the naval side of things, but also the air, because it can actually take care of itself as well. The Yak-1B is just a captured vehicle. It's just a standard Yak-1B. I would say the BF-109s are better fighters than this thing at the BR, so I wouldn't really bother about it. One of the nice little touches is you can actually see here that it still has the kind of USSR star on the camouflage, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it's just not really worth it as a vehicle, just because you have so many Emils and also F-Series ones, which are just so much better. If you want to kind of read books and also listen to audiobooks and stuff like that, the BV-238 is one of those to do it with. You can take off in air realistic or spawn in air realistic at ridiculously high altitude. Nothing can really touch you if you put it in a 5-degree climb. Bomb bases with the 250 kilo bombs, and then read the next chapter of your novel. That's pretty much how you play this thing. So if you want kind of a leisurely, relaxing experience where you can get RP and SL in War Thunder, stuff like this is not a bad idea. It can actually work pretty well for the vehicle. Then you have the Wellington. The Wellington is no good. Many people who play the Wellington will tell you this. It's a vehicle which has a really nice bomb load, even for the German one, and also has pretty good rewards on it, but also it dies over and over again because it has no protection in the game, as you can see, and also it isn't fast enough. It's designed for a role which doesn't exist in War Thunder, and also doesn't have its structural integrity properly put in, so it's just a vehicle which is awful. Just get the BV-238 and you'll actually have a good time. Then you got the Razorback P-47, which they added in. So this one is a worse version of the previous bubble canopy that was there. It's still fine, like it's still a very good vehicle. It still has, you know, the general rounds that this vehicle would have, the APIT on the 12.7s, which make it very strong. But I would say, unless you're playing Air Arcade or Air Realistic, it doesn't really have a secondary role, so you just have to play it as an superiority fighter, which you can do very effectively. It's just not something that appeals to a ton of people nowadays. Then the next vehicle, the TAR 154, has exactly the same deal. If you are playing it in that role in Air Realistic specifically as a superiority fighter, it can do really well at high altitudes. But if you're playing it in any other role, it just doesn't fit. So it's an incredibly situational vehicle, and also can get hunted down by props which turn a lot better, especially since the meta now is just to smash into each other in the middle of the map and then kind of dogfight. In the TAR 154, doesn't really fit that. The Focke-Wulf 190 A5 U14, I have no idea why anybody would want to buy this. I get that it has a torpedo, which is, you know, really nice for it and everything like that. I just don't understand why you would want to take this. What they really should do is they should actually start putting in vehicles in the standard tech tree which have access to torpedoes, such as the Heinkel 111, which actually gets access to 2, I believe. So why not just take that over this if that's its special capability? Then you have the HE219A7. This one does have a secondary role, which is, of course, ground pounding or head-oning machines, because it can go after bombers and stuff like that. The main issue with this vehicle is the fact that it needs air superiority. So if there are other fighters in the air, it will just die. If there aren't fighters in the air, though, just like stuff like the A-10, for example, it can just clean up the whole map. It has enough rounds and enough, you know, guns to be able to just annihilate anything, especially with its MK-103s. The MK-103s on this thing actually have access to the armored target belt, which pens 74 millimeters, meaning that anything on the ground it can straight up go through. It also, at the same time, is one of those vehicles which is user created, which is kind of cool. So hopefully it is one of those that people enjoy for it. It's nice to see the community getting involved in that stuff. You also have the DO335B2. So this one is the ultimate ground realistic. If you have air dominance plane, you can annihilate things. Vehicle. It has three 30mm MK103s, one 500 kilo bomb, and two 250s. So technically, you could destroy like 10 ground targets with this thing if you're left alone. If you're not left alone, then the vehicle is pretty bad. It doesn't really do too much. It generally just gets poached. In Air Realistic, it is actually not too bad, though. I use it for bomber hunting, which does work pretty well at this BR, because you have B-17s, Lancasters, you know, the lot, the B-24s, and the 30mm from range, since they're high velocity, work really well against it. If there is a single other fighter in the air, in naval or ground, you just die. So just take that into account. The Destroyer of Worlds is also available, the good old Ju-288C. So this vehicle, in its setting, is another one where you need to find a good book to read while you play it. And the reason for this is because it can't be touched. It takes off. You bomb bases, you go home, or you go to space. That's pretty much it with it. Has a really good backwards armament in the form of one 20mm MG151, which is good enough to keep you alive, by the way. Or it has three dual 13mm guns as well, which is kind of nuts when you actually think about it. There's one on the bottom here, one on the top, and then also you have the two 13s in the front here too. So decent bomb load, decent speed, even though it did get nerfed. This vehicle pretty much destroyed the area around its BR because of it existing, and also being used for bots because it was so easy to play, because it has the two DBs smashed together, the 610s, which basically make it a 4-engine bomber and make it extremely powerful. Then you have the G91. Now the G91 is not as powerful as it used to be, especially with a lot of 9.3s existing, which are insanely good. This one I don't think you pick up if you want to play it in Air Arcade or Air Realistic, but in ground it still has a place because it has the Nords. And even though the Nords have been nerfed, because before you could just land it like 20 or 30 or 40 meters from an enemy and they would just explode, now you actually have to do a little bit of aiming with them, but you can still overpressure targets. It's still really powerful as a vehicle. It also gets access to AIM-9Bs if you want to take it into stuff like Air Realistic, but I would honestly say it's not worth it. It's only a vehicle to look at in the role of course, the ground realistic area, which still is very powerful to be in. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to get it. There will be a helicopter for Germany on offer too, which is the Mi-24P HFS-80. This is just a standard Mi-24. It has access to the IRCM, which makes it super powerful because it means that IR SAMs just really struggle with destroying it. It also gets the all-aspect R60s if you want to kind of screw with people. The only issue with this vehicle is it gets access to the Sturm missiles, which don't have the greatest firing range. As a person who's been using these Mi-24s more and more, though, I find that as long as you set them up properly, and with the RWR they have, and with the IRCM, and also the countermeasures, you can still stay alive even at that range, so it's not too bad. You also get access to this, which is the new kind of gun platform, which is quite fun, which has the 7.62s and the 12.7s, which might be useful in PvE for the vehicle, because, you know, you can just against a bunch of other targets on top of the 30mm and the countermeasures this thing has. So the vehicle itself has all great factors. It just gets a bit let down by its ATG. For Naval, there's not a ton of great picks, if I'm honest with you, for the Germans. I feel like they actually have better vehicles in their standard tech trees. One of the okay picks in Blue Water is actually the Lux, weirdly enough. So this is very similar to the Leopard. It's basically just a copy of it, and you can see it has the 3 single 128s plus the two 20mm, which is exactly the same as the standard Leopard. It's a copy of the vehicle. It's a standard like low-tip premium. It's super cheap and will give you a bit of a boost in order to get into some more of the other destroyers for Germany. You know, there's a lot of like starter reserve destroyers that I feel like aren't very good, but the Lux with its 128s is completely fine as a vehicle, especially since it does get rounds which do penetrate a little bit more than the standard HE, which can give it a bit of an advantage compared to other vehicles. The other one which is available for the Blue Water setup is the Z47. Now, the Z47 is a fake ship, but at the same time, it does have some pretty cool things on it. You have basically 3 dual-mounted 128s. The only issue with these ones is you don't get AP. So basically, you are farming damage and farming score, but you just don't kill anything with it. And as someone who's spaded the Z46, this was my exact experience. Has pretty decent secondary armaments. The 37s used to be completely busted because, you know, you could control them alongside the main gun, so anything that got close to you just got shredded. And then also you have the torpedoes in the center as well. This is a completely fine 4.7 destroyer, has really good reload on the guns as well. You can see here the first stage fire rate. The issue is it just doesn't get AP, and if it got AP, it would be a 5.0, but it would be so much more nice to play. This is great for farming, great for getting rewards, but for actually doing something on the battlefield, it hurts. Then you also have the Karlsruhe. So this is very similar to a lot of the other 5.7 German cruisers. What's weird about the 5.7 German cruisers, you've got the Kern, the Leipzig, and the Nürnberg. And the Nürnberg and the Kern really shouldn't be the same BR, and the Leipzig really shouldn't be there either. The Karlsruhe is a K-class, where the Kern is also a K-class. So that's kind of like the closest thing to it. But the vehicle has these 150s. The triple 150s are not too bad on the vehicle. The issue with the Karlsruhe is its survivability. At 5.7, you basically have none. You're supposed to rely on your speed for survivability, but that just doesn't work in Naval because of how the aiming system works. Any vehicle that has to rely on speed just doesn't work. So that's how it is. You also have these 2 very juicy turrets on the back, and it's very easy to be able to get to the actual ammo on it because of how high up the ship actually sits in the water. So you can just shoot the magazines on the front or the back, taking it out. Has hardly any survivability. Also, at the same time, doesn't really have a great layout either. And even though the guns are quite good on it and they have a good fire rate, being able to fire them at a decent click is just something that's very hard to do, because if you get targeted by any of the other 5.0 or 5.7 or 6.0 cruisers, they're just going to eat you alive. There's also technically another GE premium, which is the Nassau, but I don't think that's actually on offer since it's so new, so that probably won't be there. Basically, the best one to pick out of all these is the Eugen, which is a pack premium, so that's the one to go for. Looking at the coastal side of things, you have the LS for ESO, which is just the LS3 with a 20mm instead of a 15. Don't waste your money, even on something as cheap as this. The KM5 is also just completely useless. I don't know why they added this. They added this in and then just made it like a war bond shop premium. Which doesn't really help its case. It's just a waste of time. Like there's no point in this as a vehicle. Just get to rank 3 and play these things and have a good time. VSA isn't that bad. The major issue with it is its guns have really bad firing angles. So you have these 4 turrets, which are really nice and everything like that. But as I said, the firing angles are awful, which is a big problem on the vehicle. They're generally supposed to fire upwards. And the mines themselves, they're useful, but only if your team already has an advantage. And getting that advantage is not something you're going to do in the VS8 because it's very hard to keep all the guns on target at once. So that is a problem. So as a supportive vehicle, yeah, it's pretty good. But that's not what you're looking at that BR. The M802 is the other G vehicle for the naval side of things. This one's still very good. It has technically been nerfed since they up-BR'd it, and it does go up against a lot more destroyers and stuff like that, but it still can really bully a lot of coastal machines and do really well, because it has this additional armor in the center when it comes to the coal bunker, and also the armor here, keeping it very survivable. around the center, and has the two 105s, which have a good fire rate and can pretty much overpressure anything. Has also some good secondaries too, so the vehicle still does well. It still performs incredibly well. The only thing it loses out to is, you know, stuff like the PR206, but I mean, that's pretty much everything at this BR. So overall, looking at the premiums for the naval side of things, I'd say they're not great. You know, I think there are much better options. But that's all of the G premiums for Germany done and dusted. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.